Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're just coming back from my last video, all two of you. My name is Amanda Artemis the Forester. I am a rune reader, diviner, and polytheist mystic. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what that means, polytheist specifically, and a few other words. We might get into mysticism, but we're probably going to end up mostly talking about polytheism, different kinds of polytheism, what it is, what it isn't, and also a little bit about what it means to be a polytheist in a monotheist culture. And basically see where this conversation goes from there, because as you probably can imagine, I have a lot of ideas on this subject, a lot of thoughts, and a lot of experiences. I have been some form of pagan or polytheist for going on 18 years now, so I have quite a bit of experience. But I don't want this video to get too long. Trying to keep them under 20 minutes, so we'll see. I do call myself a devotional polytheist. Polytheist obviously means many gods. And you could call me a pagan. You do use those terms interchangeably, but pagan is a very general term. And pagan covers stuff like Wicca, which is a perfectly fine path, but a little more of a modern interpretation of pre-Christian beliefs. And whereas what I do is a little bit more revivalist. I used to call it Reconstructionism, but a full reconstruction really isn't possible. And Reconstruction is really just a methodology, and you can really get obsessive about, okay, this is exactly what they did, this is the Lord, this is that, this is, and you really don't leave any room for inspiration that way. And you don't want to end up being so rigid that you end up looking basically like a pagan Protestant. You do want to leave room for the gods to actually come in and basically break your head open, because as unattractive as that wording sounds, that's what inspiration can feel like sometimes. So, polytheism, the belief in many gods. What does that mean? Pretty evident right there, but it can entail a lot of different things. So, to break it down, there's two main types: hard polytheism and soft polytheism. Hard polytheism, which I more or less subscribe to, is the idea that all gods and goddesses and entities, which we'll probably do another video on that, meaning spirits, elves, rites, nymphs, any holy power that is less than a god but more than human, they're all distinct. They're all individual. They are all beings. They have their own thoughts. They have their own wills. They have their own powers, and they have their own intentions. And most of them are good, and a lot of them are neutral. I don't think any of them are evil. I think evil is a very human term. That's not to say evil doesn't exist, but not as a being. Evil is more of a formlessness, and again, that's a whole nother subject that I could go off on, but, okay, there's so much to unpack here. The papers I'm referring to, by the way, are actually from a class that I taught a long time ago, so I just printed out some of my old classwork just so that I would have something to refer to. But I used to run a temple out of my home called the Temple of Athena the Savior. But that temple is now defunct. I've been living like a nomad for too long, so the temple no longer exists in physical space, but if you go to my blog, you can see pictures of what it used to look like. But so if you see me shuffling through some papers, this is just so I can try to keep myself on track. So, that is the basis of hard polytheism, is that Zeus and Odin are not the same. Zeus and Hera are not the same. They are not, they are all separate beings, separate identities. They are gods, they are beings, they have power and thoughts. Soft polytheism, as you might imagine, is the opposite. There's a Wiccan saying that is basically all gods are one god, all goddesses are one goddess. Now that might be best described as dual theism, the belief in a god and a goddess. You know, the masculine principle and the feminine principle. And maybe behind that they believe that it's all one, so it's still soft polytheism. But those two different types of soft polytheism right there. Now there's another type which was called the Interpreto Graecia or the Interpreto Romana, depending whether we're talking about Greece or Rome. But this is kind of a controlled soft polytheism, where they basically believed that there was one pantheon, but would relate each another culture's gods as being a face of their own. So they would very much believe that Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena were separate, distinct goddesses, but would have no problem saying that, meeting an Egyptian and hearing about Hathor and saying, oh, that sounds like you're Aphrodite. Okay, Aphrodite came to you as Hathor. You know, and so then we also get the stories of the Greek gods fleeing Olympus from the monstrous Typhonus, and they all flee to Olympus in different shapes of animals, and Aphrodite, of course, flees at the cow, so she becomes Hathor in Egypt. Or Io. Also, that's another one, there's two different versions, where Io would also become Hathor, which was Zeus's lover that he had to hide from Hera. One of Zeus's many lovers that he had to hide from Hera. One that got turned into a cow. Don't slip with Zeus. Bad plan. Anyway, so that was kind of like a controlled soft polytheism. But they would have definitely, basically the idea that there's one pantheon of gods, but that they interpret themselves differently through different cultures. So, I understand this point of view, and I think that we can learn a lot about the gods by seeing where they sync up. But I don't see Odin and Hermes as the same. They have a lot of similarities, and in fact, when Odin first came into my life, I thought that I was confusing him with Hermes, and because Hermes was very active in my life at that time, so that was also part of why I really didn't want to get involved in the Norse stuff. No, I basically told Odin no. Doesn't really work with the Allfather. He gets what he wants. But I basically said, I've got enough gods in my pantheon. All due respect, sir. I don't need another one. You're cool. I think you're awesome. I like that Viking TV show. You know, you're awesome, but no thank you. And, yeah. Now I read runes professionally. So, that obviously didn't work out, did it? Anyway, yeah, I really don't think they're the same. It's interesting to see their similarities, but I can feel a distinct difference between them. So I'm definitely more on the hard polytheist side of the spectrum. Now, with the Roman and the Greek gods, you run into a different conundrum, because they are almost exactly the same. And so there are people who will say, well, that's kind of a special situation. Now, there are differences. People will sometimes say that there are hard polytheists in every other case, except they will say, well, I think Jupiter and Zeus are the same, just because the Romans and the Greek are very, very similar. They might not be the same, or they might be. It's the gods, and it's kind of hard to tell. So you can kind of go either way. But there are differences, and it's important to study them. Mars, for example, has a lot of strong agricultural aspects that Ares never had in Greece. At least none that I've been able to find. I mean, I'm not officially like a scholar. I don't have a history degree, although I have studied this a lot. So maybe Ares had some agricultural aspects in some parts of Greece that I don't know about, but he definitely had a lot more agricultural aspects and was related to farming a lot more in Rome. So that's pretty interesting, in my opinion. Which also is kind of interesting that the very first Aries sign in the zodiac, the astrological sign Aries, is also when the planting season in the spring begins, if you think about it that way. But it's also when the war season in Rome would start, because when it snowed, you can't really go to war. Their wars were pretty much dictated by weather, so they would have wars in the summer and then come home. So there's that. Alright, so hard polytheist is what I am, but why do I add the term devotional? Well, I think a lot of people tend to focus more on belief, and I think that's a cultural thing. I think that's because in our society people say, I believe in Jesus, I believe this, I believe that, and act like that's enough. And our religion is very much a religion of praxis. It's a religion of practice, not just belief. It's not enough to have fuzzy feelings toward the gods in your heart. You have to actually practice. And you just have to do it when you don't feel like it. Now, there are some things you can't do when you're not feeling good. Like, I don't do real big showy rituals when I feel like crap. And I don't, going back to the last video, I don't cast magic if I'm in a really bad mood. Because you obviously can't do it then. It's all about mindset, all about intention. But my daily devotions, my meditations, and my daily prayers, I do every day. Now, I am human. And there are days I fall off the wagon. And I don't do it because I slept in or I was lazy. But I try. And I apologize, because this is a relationship. When you start to see the gods as beings, not as, oh, Zeus is a personification of weather, but as a person, obviously more powerful than you, way more powerful, way more wise, but it becomes a relationship, not just a symbol of something, not an abstraction, but this is a being, this is a person. And so you really need to actually maintain a relationship. You don't just go up to someone, a stranger that you have never talked to, and ask them to give you something, right? If you're having a hard time. Well, you don't pray to the gods when you need something. You build a relationship with them. You pray to them because they're gods, because they're powerful and amazing and beautiful, and because they created us, and because they created this beautiful, incredible world that we live in, and everything is just, they give us so much. They give us the ground beneath our feet. The Demeter gives us the grain. Odin is our very breath. Odin was the one who breathed breath into Ask and Imbla, the first man and woman. He's consciousness. He's the one who gave us our minds. The ability to question and to think. So, I mean, for everything that they give us, we give back to them. I mean, it'll never be enough. I mean, obviously, but it's just a small token. And you start to build a relationship with them. And yeah, when you need something, in my experience, when you really need something, they'll be there for you. Now, am I, like, rolling in dough up the wazoo? No, I'm not. But are my basic needs taken care of? Yes. Have I been through hard times? Fuck yes. Excuse the vulgarity. But I'm still here, aren't I? I've survived it all. I really don't know if I would have if it hadn't been for them. If I didn't have my gods, I really do not know if I would have survived what I've been through. And I'm not going to get into detail. So, devotion. That's why I call myself a devotional polytheist. Because this is really, that's what it's about. It's really about building this devotional relationship. This deep sense of awe. And that's something our society doesn't have anymore. We have become such a sarcastic, cynical culture. We don't nurture awe. Really, the only thing I can think of in mainstream culture that has a sense of awe would be Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos. I cannot think of a single other thing that nurtured a sense of awe. And that makes me very, very sad. The majority of people are so sad and cynical, and there's a yearning in so many people for spirituality. There's just this yearning for people just crying out. We don't want to be cynical. We don't want to kill our souls dead, but that is what our overculture is doing. And it's partially monotheism and it's partially secularism. Right now there is this clash between the two, and polytheism is kind of caught in the middle. Because on the one hand, evangelical Christians are right. Can't believe I just said that sentence. Evangelical Christians are right that secular culture is very, very anti-devotion and very deadening to spirituality. But I don't agree with evangelical Christians' interpretation of it. And while we're on the subject of Christianity, I do believe in Jesus. I don't worship him. But polytheist doesn't mean I worship every single god. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Yahweh. They're gods. They're not my gods. And that is something that has blown the minds of pretty much every normal person I've had this conversation with. Like, it's very hard for them to comprehend. They think the only option are Christian, Jew, Muslim, or atheist. Monotheist or atheist. They really cannot comprehend anything else. It's like their minds have been so colonized by this monotheistic filter that they cannot think outside of that. I mean, I've heard people say that Socrates and Aristotle were monotheists before monotheism was invented, that they were Christians before Christ, and do not get me started on that. No, they were not. Alright? That just wasn't enough for you guys to destroy our entire culture. You have to start coming for our philosophers too. We invented the word theology. We invented theology. And that's another thing. I've seen pagans claim that paganism is a religion without theology. It's not. We pagans invented theology. And so we see pagans who have been wounded, emotionally wounded by growing up in a probably a fundy culture. And I'm not gonna lie, I had to work through a lot of issues. If Odin had come to me when I was a teenager, I probably would not have responded to him. I probably would not have responded very well to a male god at all, especially one who reminded me of a sky father. Even Zeus, I probably would not have responded well. The first deity that I was very hardcore into worshiping was Athena. I came from a very fundamental Christian home, and a lot of pagans did. And when we've been wounded, we're running from that, we end up not rebuilding our own traditions. We end up defining ourselves by what we're not defining ourselves by what we are. We do have theology. We invented the word theology. We should not be afraid of the word prayer, because I've also seen pagans say that, Christians pray, pagans don't pray. Pagans pray. Pagans have prayed. Pagans continue to pray. Pagans have always and always will pray. Pagans pray. Pagans also cast spells. It is not one or the other. You don't have to do one or the other. You don't have to cast spells, but I would argue you have to pray. I know I might offend some people saying that, but it is really, you should pray. Pagans pray. Pagans have theology. Though we are not, we don't have a Bible. We don't have rules that you have to thump, but we do have a practice. And it's just, I'm really going off on a tangent, so I'm trying to collect my thoughts here, and I hope that this isn't too rambly. But this is something that is very important to me, because these are all words that Christians have claimed, but modern pagans have allowed them to claim it. And I think we need to take them back. Theology just means talking about the gods. And thinking about the gods and how that exists. And one of the organizations that I am a part of, Neos Alexandria, actually published a book called Ascendant about pagan theology. And they're working on a second one. I'll put a link to that in the video description. Another really good book on pagan theology is Raven Kaldera's Dealing with Deities. I highly suggest you read that. Highly suggest it. But that's something that we need the philosophy as much as we need the mysticism. And so far, as we've been rebuilding our traditions, it's mostly been weighted towards the mysticism and experiential half of the religion, which is good. Especially since a lot of our books were burned, and a lot of the lore has been lost, especially on the Norse side. I am dual tradition. Especially on the Norse side, a lot of lore has been lost. So it is good that we are directly experiencing the gods and getting inspiration directly from them, because that's how we rebuild our traditions. But we need more than that. And not every pagan is cut out to be a mystic. Not everyone needs to be a mystic. Being a mystic is hard, and sometimes not fun. And people are going to be going to their jobs and raising children and having a life, and we just need to live it. Live your religion. Be out if you can. I'm more or less out. I wear my Thor's hammer at work every day. So far I haven't gotten any questions about it, because unlike a pinnacle, nobody knows what the heck a Thor's hammer is. I do have a policy of never denying my gods. I did recently tell somebody at work I was pagan, because she found out about my online T-shirt store, and I'm like, I have to warn you that, I'll give you the link if you really want to go see my art, but I have to warn you that it's all pagan stuff. So, be out if you can. That is the best way to rebuild. I think that's very important. Obviously, especially if you're in the South, and if you have children, I understand being a little more cautious, but you should be proud. We're rebuilding something that is sacred, and our gods are incredible, and this is America. And despite everything, despite all of America's problems, and we do, obviously, have a lot of problems, we were founded on religious freedom. And I might be misremembering this, but I believe that it was Thomas Jefferson who says it does me no harm if my neighbor believes in no God or in 20. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. So even our founding fathers didn't care if their neighbors were polytheists. He was probably thinking of Hindus, but there you go. It was written about by the founding fathers. I don't know if Thomas Jefferson knew a Hindu. I don't know if he knew a polytheist, or if it was just, a thought thing, but we were officially thought about by the founding fathers. So, you have a right to be here. You have a right to be loud and proud. You have a right to practice your religion. And you have a right to claim the word theology, prayer, bless. I have those little things around my home that say bless our home. Those don't say the Christian God. A lot of them say a Bible verse on them. I buy the thing to say bless this home. Anyway, this has already gotten to be way too long. Yeah. This is Amanda Artemis of Forrester, bringing you what started out as definitions of polytheism and turned into something of a rant. So, have a nice night. Skull.